We will go ahead and get started. I'm going to start slow. I think there's people still joining, but welcome. Thanks for joining us for another Pocket Talk. And I'm going to talk to, I'm Jeff Burns. I'm a neurologist and co-direct the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. And I'm just going to give a really quick update on research, but the point here is to give you, ideas for how to connect people with us. For those patients who are asking you questions about, prevention or questions about Alzheimer's, with an interest in research and the lots of research advances happening. We want to be able to support them and support you and sort of answering their questions. So again, I'm Jeff Burns. I co-direct the Alzheimer's Research Center, and I lead some of the research projects we have here. And I'll just, again, I'm give you a quick overview. But first, sort of, here's the punchline. If you have patients, if you have, family members asking questions about brain health, about dementia, we've created programs like our My Alliance for Brain Health program, which is really a great way for them to get connected with lots of educational opportunities. We do weekly webinars. We have a weekly newsletter that comes out through the My Alliance, under the My Alliance sort of header. It has tips. It has links to LEAP, our prevention program. We've got caregiver resources all sort of online and behind that, and ongoing activities. And so that's probably the best way to get people connected with everything we're doing, is recommend they sign up for My Alliance and go to our website. Or I think I show a URL here at the end, but if they're interested in research, they can jump online and find us. LEAP, our lifestyle program, and then all our other resources. So that's a great way to get them connected. You can refer patients to us for research only just by typing in Alzheimer's research, ambulatory referral for Alzheimer's research, or just reach out and contact us. Email me. We've got Amy Wilson and others who would be happy to work with you to see if we can meet your needs. We're trying to listen to needs and build things to help you do your job. So like Pocket Talks, hopefully, is helping you do that. So speak up and we'll do what we can to help you. So, and that's patients with MCI, patients with Alzheimer's or related dementias like FTD and Lewy body, family history, if they're just interested in prevention. We want to be able to provide them with good information. So that's our job, that's our mission, and we're here to help you and your patients. So okay, so that's sort of the overview, and I'll come back to that a little bit at the end. But let's talk about sort of the state of research. Alzheimer's is incredibly common. I'm sure you know this. It's over 6 million Americans, which is a lot, but the 1 in 3 over the age of 85, I think, really puts it in perspective. So it's about 1 in 10 over the age of 65, 1 in 3 over the age of 85. So if you're seeing patients 85 and older, you've got patients with Alzheimer's and dementia. It is that common. So incredibly common. And that's why we're working so hard at it. That's why we need better treatments and better prevention strategies. We need good, solid proof that we can delay the onset. We're working on that. And then we need better drugs. And we're working on that. And we have a new drug. This is actually kind of a historic time. In the next few weeks, we'll have a brand new drug will be fully approved by the FDA. We are an Alzheimer's Research Center. What does that mean? It means we fought hard, and every 5 years we sort of fight hard and submit a huge grant. It takes a good year to submit. Our first one took 7 years of work to get into the club. It means we have a lot going on. Research is the main thrust of these research centers, and we have a huge amount going on. We support over 100 investigators, but we also are really pouring a lot of effort into how can we help the community, how can we impact the community? And we can do that through caregiver support, patient support, but also work with primary care and neurologists to help optimize treatment for that region and the state. And so we're working really hard on that. Anyway, it's great to have that designation. It's really important for Kansas City. It's important for us. It's important for investigators. And we work hard to maintain it. But we're excited because that network and the work of, thousands of other people all around the world, really has us at a new point where it's a hopeful time. We're on the verge of new therapies. This drug that I'll talk about, it's not a cure, but it is evidence that we're making progress. And I believe when we talk about a cure, it's not a question of if we cure it, it's a question of when we cure it. Now, how we cure it is probably going to take an approach from different angles, multiple angles, including the newest angle that we're adding, which is this new class of drugs, monoclonal antibodies against amyloid. So it's a new class of drugs that go after amyloid and actually are able to get the immune system to remove it from the brain. There's actually 3 drugs that are in sort of either accelerated approval or late stage approval. I'll talk about the one that we'll receive. We're all expecting full approval within the next few weeks, but this is a figure here on the left. The lines going down shows the reduction in amyloid with treatment, and the placebo group is the red line at the top. And the pictures are taken from another article, but using the same drug, the aducanumab drug, shows before and after treatment at the top. That's the placebo group. You can see the reds and yellows really don't change. Amyloid will accumulate slightly over time once you have a lot of it. But on the bottom there, this picture on the bottom shows somebody before and after treatment, and you can see basically removal of the amyloid by these drugs to a normal level. This is a normal scan on these amyloid PET scans. So the drugs work as designed to remove amyloid from the brain. The big question is, what's the impact of the drug on the clinical symptoms and the clinical decline? What really matters? Here's the new drug is called Leqembi or lecanemab. Leqembi is the brand name that I'm sure we'll see on TV in the next year or so advertised, but it actually works really well to remove amyloid, the figure here shown. And then it also translates into some slowing of decline. Now, this is an 18-month time period here. Placebo group declines steadily. The group that's treated has less decline. So a couple points that are important. This isn't a cure, so we don't stop decline. But on average, with 700 to 800 people in each group, on average, we see a slowing of decline. That's probably 3 to 6 months over this 18-month period. So that's, that we think that's clinically important. You can argue about how important, and we will. We're going to argue a lot, I think, about how important this is versus the risks and benefits. But it is clearly slowing decline, and all the other outcome measures that sort of triangulate around this idea of slowing cognitive decline show the same thing, the same picture: a slowing of decline in cognitive testing, a slowing of decline in activities of daily living. Even quality of life measures look pretty good in terms of improvements, so or less decline. And so this is what the FDA is looking at right now, and what their panel last week voted, I think 6 or 7 to nothing, that it does show a clinical benefit, and they recommended approval, and we're expecting that approval by July 6th. And so it is a historic time, and exciting to have a new drug that is going to be added to our, to what we've got, which I put on the slide earlier. We have the existing drugs, which Dr. Townley's talking about in the other sessions, mainly donepezil and Namenda, and now we have this drug for a small segment. Now, I'm not here to talk about this drug, but we can do more discussions about that, and we will in the future. But the drug is going to be used for people in the mild stages, MCI, mild cognitive impairment, or very mild Alzheimer's disease. So that's a small segment of who we see, but an important segment, of course. So we're working out who do we treat and how, and have a lot we'll bring back to you in the future. So, but it's an exciting time, not just because we have these amyloid drugs emerging, but we have a diversity of approaches in testing, more diversity in terms of what we're going after in Alzheimer's disease than ever. And 15 years ago, we only had a couple things we were going after, amyloid being one of them, and not a whole lot after that, honestly. And now we have all these things, all these dots on the right represent late stage trials that are ongoing. So big studies that are ongoing. So there's never been more diversity and more effort to fight Alzheimer's. And that brings me a lot of hope, I think, because it's going to take that kind of approach, going after Alzheimer's from a lot of different angles. Our theme as an ADRC, Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, is metabolism. We participate in all the different studies, but metabolism is kind of our theme that we bring to the network that others don't have. So we lead the way in things. Russ Swerdlow leads the way in mitochondrial research and trying to understand the role of mitochondria and mitochondrial dysfunction in Alzheimer's. And we do a lot of work in lifestyle, partly because of those lifestyle factors, or those lifestyle interventions like exercise and diet influence metabolism and other things. But really interested in that and kind of leading the way nationally, but also internationally in these areas. So examples of drug development and studies we're doing that are focused on metabolism. So we've spent the last 15 years working on things like exercise and diet and really trying to understand how they boost the brain. So that sort of gives you a flavor of our themes. And this is just a picture to say we support a lot of people. The ADRC isn't about a few investigators. It's about how do we get more people working on this disease from any institution. And these are people from KU Lawrence, KU Med, even KCU and Stowers. So and Wichita and Emporia State even. So our job as a center is to help, do our research to move the field forward, but more importantly, support everybody who wants to move research forward. And so we're having an impact. Just a quick snapshot, a couple of sort of measures that reflect success. These aren't the measures that, are necessarily our success, but total funding, NIA funding, has grown from $100,000 in 2004 to about 20 million right now. Pretty amazing growth. And then the number of publications, the number of manuscripts we're putting out each year has really grown dramatically. And these are really good measures of are we innovating and are we leading the field? And the answer is yes, we've really come a long way. So we're making an impact. On the prevention front, we also, when we started almost 20 years ago, people weren't talking about prevention, and that is really the goal now. And it sort of revolves around this idea that if we can get somebody to sort of do all the right things, eat right, exercise right, we might be able to push the onset back for that individual. They're destined to get it. We don't know who's destined and who's not, but we're getting closer to that. But if we do that across the population, push the onset back 5 years, we can cut the incidence in half. Postponing it 5 years will cut the incidence in half. That's pretty amazing. And so I think, I see, the future being one where lifestyle, and drugs, the way we think about, say, cardiac disease, are essential for promoting brain health and reducing the risk long-term and of dementia incidents. So that's coming and that's emerging. And we're sort of 30, 40 years behind cardiology, but it's moving fast. So can we prevent dementia? We don't know yet. We think we can, but we haven't proven it. There's a lot of evidence that we can. When we say prevention, we actually are talking about delaying the onset, pushing it back, ideally, forever. So, but what is it going to take? We do need to get smarter about what is Alzheimer's. And we do know now that multiple things, not just amyloid, is the cause of Alzheimer's disease. And so we need to embrace that, get smarter about that, and then develop strategies going after it in a complex way, that idea of going after it from multiple angles. And then we need to take those interventions to the population. We need to take them from the lab to the population. And these are things we're working on. So what are the risk factors for Alzheimer's? We start there, really. And we know age and genetics are the strongest risk factors. 85 and older, 1 out of 3. As you get older, the risk rises dramatically. Genetics, who your parents are, matters. It's not destiny for the majority, but it matters. But then a lot of modifiable things are important. Things that we can change. So education, alcohol, smoking, cardiovascular risk factors, hypertension, obesity, physical inactivity, they're big and modifiable. And these are the 12 modifiable risk factors that the Lancet Commission identified, and from the literature with a lot of evidence to suggest these are things we can work on, and we can cut. We can reduce probably by 40% dementia if we really focus on these risk factors. So, and it's not too early to start moving these ideas into primary care. This was published in 2021 in the journal Stroke by American Heart Association statement saying it's time to really figure out how to begin to implement and operationalize these ideas that we're learning in the lab into primary care. And that's a lot of what we've been doing. And I'll give you an example. We think about, all right, if exercise works, we think it does. And actually, we have a ways to go to really prove it scientifically. And we have big studies, sort of lab-based studies going on right now where we're beginning to analyze data on 600 plus people exercise for a year to really try to prove definitively how big of an impact and, how much do we need and what can we expect from exercise. A lot of people accept that. And I think we have to mentally play the game. All right, if exercise does work, you know what? We're not using it well. We need to package it better and we need to deliver it better. And that's been one of the motivations for the LEAP program. A lot of content that we package and we deliver it to try to influence people's lives and change their lifestyle. And we even took it to the point where we could prescribe it, where in the clinics, we could get primary care docs, get a best practice alert to prescribe it in a way, and then test if we prescribe this package. This was a 1 year sort of package through the YMCAs. Does it impact, the patient in a positive way? So we tested it sort of pragmatically as a prescription in YMCAs, and we just got the results and we're analyzing it right now and writing it up right now. But we enrolled 219 people, average age of 72, and our primary outcome, not brain health, because this isn't a big enough study, but something that we think is linked with brain health through our other studies, which is cardiorespiratory fitness, or VO2 peak. We were able to show that if we simply enroll somebody in this program, that VO2 peak is increased at both 12 and 52 weeks. We see about a 4% increase in VO2 peak. That's pretty good. When we put people in a lab-based study and really work very, very intensely with them, we can get an 8, 9, 10% increase over 6 months to a year. So 4% may sound, it's about half that. Now this isn't, but we're happy with this. We can do better, but we're happy with that. And this is all during a pandemic and et cetera. So pretty exciting, brand new results. We did not see effects on other measures that we wanted to see change: cholesterol, hemoglobin A1C, and body composition. But it's a first step saying, all right, we can do a lot better. And if you were part of that study, we can do better. We started it 7, 8 years ago, and at a time where we didn't really know how to work well with the EMR and et cetera. So we're looking forward to LEAP RX 2.0. So kind of wrap it up, where are we headed with clinical practice? This is where we're headed pretty rapidly, which is to detect changes of Alzheimer's disease early or before the onset of symptoms and do something to stop it, to halt it or stop it. And I think this is within reach. Now it's going to take, years, but we define Alzheimer's as somebody who has the syndrome of dementia, memory and thinking changes in life with the presence of the amyloid plaques and tangles in their brain. And we can now detect those changes, pretty routinely. We are doing this routinely on the research side with imaging, with spinal fluid, and in the blood. We're doing that routinely on the research side. It's coming soon to the clinic, very soon. So, a year or two. The way these things work, the imaging works, I'll just quickly explain. These PET scans, we can inject a compound that sticks to amyloid and emits a little signal that our PET scan can pick up. And so instead of waiting until somebody dies to see it under the microscope, which is what we did for 100 years, until about 10 years ago, when these PET scans became something we could do. They're not routine quite yet in practice, but they may be with these new drugs. So amyloid PET scans, if Medicare begins to pay for those, we're going to start doing quite a few of them to detect the presence of amyloid in the brain in life. And why would we want to do that? Well, I'll talk about it's the new drugs that go after amyloid. But the Holy Grail is a blood test. And again, this is Dr. Jill Morris working on it on a Simoa machine. We're getting a new one called Lumipulse here soon, but we have lots of avenues for testing in blood, and it's moving quick. We're going to be able to detect with pretty high probability whether or not somebody has amyloid in their brain with blood tests. And then we'll probably confirm with amyloid PET imaging or CSF for a while. But we think eventually these plasma blood-based markers are going to replace those sort of more invasive and expensive procedures and help guide treatment. But the key is we see the evidence of amyloid in the brain years before the onset of symptoms. And that gives us a time window. If we can now go after amyloid, that might allow us to remove that sort of whatever amyloid's doing in the process, remove it, maybe delay the onset, and then go after other targets in the meantime. And so this is within reach that we're actually not only within reach, we're doing this. We've been doing this for a good 8 years on the research side, detecting these amyloid changes in the brain, and then trying to develop interventions, prove that the interventions we have actually do something to halt or stop the process or slow the process. And the evidence isn't there yet, but we think it's coming. So we're excited it's coming. So I hope you can see there's a lot of hope, a lot of new possibilities, and that we think prevention works and there's a cure out there. And that's what's driving us to do things like this. We want to network with folks. We want to find ways to get our research into practice, et cetera. And so we've done even things like this, our cognitive care network, which is a statewide network that we support a variety of practices and 110 primary care docs in those practices by supporting their patients with social work support and education to the docs. So trying to build a network so that we can optimize care across the state and also hook people up who are interested with our research. And then ultimately, we want to deliver research through this network, things like the LEAP program through the network. So that's the long-term goal. But back to, if you have patients with MCI, Alzheimer's, or who are worried about their risk, we have opportunities. On the research side, you can't read any of this, but we have it. This is a frontotemporal dementia study. We have a Lewy body study. We have Alzheimer's studies. We have MCI studies. We have normal cognition studies, people for prevention, and lots of them. And we're recruiting for all these studies, and we need research participants. And I can tell you this, there's nothing that slows us down more than finding those volunteers, those research participants, which is why we need you to, if you have people, refer them to us, even a Latino caregiver study here at the bottom. Anyway, so if you have these folks, the easiest thing is hook them up to My Alliance. Hook them up to recommend they get hooked up with us through the My Alliance newsletter, once a week newsletter. But talk about our research. You don't have to know if they qualify. We'll figure that out. Get them to hook up with us, and then we'll take it from there. Or recommend our LEAP programs and our resources online. And again, a simple way is if you're seeing somebody, look for this referral to Alzheimer's research, or you could reach out directly to us. Or Amy Wilson is always happy to follow up with you. Okay, so I'll stop there, and we're good on time. And I don't know if there's any questions or comments. And I see something in the chat. So the question is, there's a new study, LIFT AD, a phase 2/3 trial. You know what? I don't know it. But it's a phase 3 trial of a ATH1017, which is a small molecule to enhance hepatocyte growth factor. Actually, I don't know anything about it, and I don't think we're participating. So there's a lot of, we're participating in a variety of studies, but not that one. So, but there's a great example of, the diversity of approaches, the investment in, it used to be that the field would really only invest in amyloid. And we, as a metabolism center, would get frustrated by that. But now you can see, as an example there, that there's investment going in lots of different areas. And I showed you that slide, and that's exactly what it's going to take. And so we're always bringing on new studies, but we haven't brought that one on. So, okay, any other questions or comments? Or, well, we'd love to hear from you, and you can do this now, or you can email me, is how can we do better? How can we help you hook your patients up? If there's is there a need? And if so, how can we help you meet that need on the research side? So, so we're always looking for that, and we will work really hard to make it happen, because again, I mentioned this, the number one thing that slows us down more than anything is finding we're finding those volunteers. And it's not from a lack of effort. I mean, we have a big team of about probably 10 people led by Tina Lewandowski, Dr. Tina Lewandowski, and others, so who are focused solely on how do we spread the word about what we do, and how do we get, those phone calls or people to take that first step. So yeah, we want to hear from you. We're doing this for you. So, all right. Any other, and I can't give an opinion on hepatocyte growth factor. I don't know. There must be receptors in the brain, or growth factors must be targeting something. So, yeah. Okay. We'll wait 10 seconds, and if that is it, we'll call it early. So, yep. And then I guess we are excited about the new drug. There's going to be a lot of news, and reach out for information, because we'll try to do some webinars on that drug. And we're working really hard in the clinic to try to solve this problem of access. We have a huge access problem. I'm sure you know. We've tried to get somebody in with us. We need to triple or quadruple in size. We've got about 1 FTE of docs. That's it in the memory clinic. 4 docs, but total about 1 FTE. And that can't meet the demands, of course. So we need you to advocate for us too. So, but we're working on some innovative approaches for how do we get this treatment to the right patients? How do we help you get the treatment to the right patients? How do we help neurologists, et cetera? So we got a lot of work going on in that area. So look to hear from us, and don't hesitate to reach out if your patients are asking you about the drug. So next Pocket Talk is June 30th from Dr. Townley. So, okay, we'll stop there, and thanks a lot for joining us. Lewy body disease is coming next with Dr. Townley on June 30th, which is the second most common cause of dementia. So it's a good talk. He's an expert in that area.